Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. Today I'm continuing my 80 series Land Cruiser DIY series with a double service, changing the automatic transmission fluid and the transfer case oil. If you're running an A442F transmission like I am, with the factory turbo diesel and full-time four-wheel drive, this will guide you through and help you knock out both jobs in your driveway in one day. Let's get stuck in. I first tackle the transfer case oil change. First thing you need to do is find the transfer case, which is behind the transmission, as you can see in the video. There are two 24mm drain plugs, one on top, which is the fill plug, which you can see me undoing just now, and the bottom one is the drain plug. So I first undid the fill plug, just in case it's seized or stripped. You never want to be in the situation where you drain the oil and then you realise you can't refill it because you couldn't get the fill plug out. Here I'm undoing the 3 bolts for the bash guard for the transfer case, using a 12mm socket. Now I'm using a 24mm socket to undo the sump plug in the transfer case. As you can see, I remove the drain plug and let the old gear oil drain out into a pan, using my 24mm socket. As you can see, when the oil starts to flow out, it seems to be in pretty good condition. Since I've owned the vehicle, I've never changed the oil in the transfer case, so I was quite happy with the colour of the oil coming out. It also had your typical gear oil smell, but nothing to be alarmed about. I let the oil drain out for about 10 minutes so I could get out as much of the old oil as possible before I put my new oil in. While I was waiting for the oil to drain, I went ahead and changed the washers on my fill plug and my sump plug, as you can see here. There's a very small amount of some metal on the sump plug magnet, as you can see here. Now I replace the aluminium crush washer on the sump plug, and then I go ahead and change the aluminium crush washer on the fill plug, and this was the worst washer I had to change out of all the sump plug fill plugs I had on my Land Cruiser. Trust me, watch this part. I tried a razor blade, I tried the screwdriver, then I decided side cutters, so I had to cut it off. I had to cut it in a couple of places and a bit of twist and wrangling to get it off. It eventually come off though. Now when you see this washer compared to the stock washer, obviously this has been undone, reused lots of time, because as you can see the rest of my washers on the bench that I'd previously taken off the front and back diff, this by far was the fattest and thickest washer. It's obviously been used so many times and no one's ever replaced it in its lifetime. I found this part of the job the most time consuming, believe it or not, as I'm still struggling to get this one washer off. Don't forget to inspect both plugs, that's the thread and the magnetic part on the drain plug, for any contamination, any cross threads while you're going with this process, and careful you don't damage any threads while you're trying to get the washers off. So here finally you can see I got the washer off, thank goodness. Now have a close look and you can see how much bigger this washer is compared to the stock washer. There you go, have a look at that. Now it's time to reinstall the drain plug. Don't forget to clean the area with some brake clean before you reinstall the drain plug. I refitted the drain plug and torqued it to about 35 Newton meters with the torque wrench. The oil I used was 75W-90 full synthetic gear oil, rated GL-4 or GL-5. Either is fine according to the Land Cruiser manual. Instead of using the hand pump bottle which you buy at your local parts store, I've used my homemade fill process again, which is 2 bits of plastic tube drilled hole through the lid, a bit of copper pipe on one end to hold it down in the bottle. I put a curve on the piece of copper pipe on the other end to hook it into the fill plug hole. Then I use my air compressor to pressurise the oil bottle, which in turn forces the oil into the transfer case. Roughly 1.8 litres of oil come out of the transfer case, which is right on spec, so make sure you've got enough oil to put the 1.8 litres back in. I could not find where Toyota specifies a super strict oil change interval on the transfer case, so I aim to change the transfer case oil about every 40,000 kilometres, especially since the full-time four-wheel drive system is always working. The automatic transmission I change every 20,000 k's with full synthetic oil due to mainly towing with the Land Cruiser. So here I am connecting my air compressor to a small clear hose which pressurizes the oil bottle, which pumps the oil in, as you can see here, flowing into the transmission case. I kept filling the transfer case with oil, as you can see here, until it started to slightly drip out. Then I know it's full. Now it is time to remove the inlet line from the pump fill bottle and replace the fill plug in the transfer case, as you can see here. I hold up the inlet fill line from the oil pump bottle to allow the oil to drain back to the bottle so it doesn't drip all over the floor. You can see the air bubbles going back to the bottle now in the clear tube. Torque the fill plug to 35 Newton meters with your 24mm socket. Reinstall the bash plate which covers the transfer case with the 3 bolts, and the socket required is a 12mm hex head socket. Once this is done, give everything a clean up with some brake clean, and that part of the job is almost done. Now check for leaks, give everything a wipe over and have a quick look around, and that's it for the transfer case. Now on to changing the oil in the automatic transmission, which is an A442F 4-speed auto. The process of changing the automatic oil is straightforward, especially because the transmission has a factory sump plug, which makes it quite easy to do. First step is to warm up the transmission fluid. I started by taking the car for a short 10-minute drive to warm up the transmission fluid. Warm fluid drains better and helps flush out more contaminants. I cycled through the gears while stationary to make sure the oil circulated through the whole system. It's not necessary, but I undid the pan guard just to check for any oil leaks because I had the pan off the transmission only 2 weeks earlier to change the solenoids, which I've added a picture at the end of the video for you. I used a 24mm socket to loosen the sump plug and let the old ATF completely drain out. As you can see here, this crush washer was in good condition because, as I just said, I've only just replaced the pan gasket and the filter about 2 weeks ago, due to having to change out some faulty solenoids in the automatic transmission. Clean everything up, replace the washer on your sump plug, the new aluminium crush washer, degrease everything, reinstall with your 24mm socket and torque to 35 Newton meters. Give everything a degrease and a wipe over with a rag so the area is clean, so you can check for oil leaks later after you do your final inspections. Reinstall the sump guard, which was not necessary to undo if you're just changing the oil out of the pan. 4 bolts hold it on, quite easy to remove and replace. As I'm getting the sump guard back into place, just a quick reminder, this bit of the job might seem boring, but it's one of those small things that makes a big difference. It protects your transmission from rocks and debris and the damage when you're out on the tracks, especially an A series which is built to handle the tough stuff. You want to keep everything underneath protected. I like to take a quick look around at all the bolts and mounting points as I go. Make sure nothing is stripped or loose. It's also a good time to double check that there's nothing leaking from the pan or the lines. It only takes a few extra seconds but can save you a lot of drama later. Alright, just tighten the last few bolts now and we're ready to move on to the next step. I also checked all the bolts on the drain pan were at correct torque specs, as I had just replaced the cork gasket a couple of weeks earlier. Now in the engine bay, I remove the transmission dipstick and use a small funnel to pour in about 4 litres of Castrol Transmax Z synthetic oil. After filling up the oil, I start the engine and slowly cycle through each gear from park to low and back again, pausing briefly in each gear. Then I checked the dipstick while the engine was still idling in park. I topped it up a little more until it reached the safe zone on the stick. Now check for leaks and take for a test drive. I got back under the car and checked for any leaks around the sump plug and cooler lines, and all was good. I included here a quick picture of the solenoids I changed a couple of weeks earlier because the transmission wasn't changing properly. And that's another couple of jobs ticked off on the 80 series Land Cruiser. The auto is shifting smoother and the transfer case has fresh oil ready for the next adventure. If you found this video helpful, make sure you give it a like and subscribe for more DIY tips and Land Cruiser projects. Thanks for watching.